Nigerians continue to
Tonight,
travel
the
in
city
and
of
out
Lagos
of
waits
their
and God as all routes.
To you on
Be the first to know.
on Core TV News.
From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa,
A federal high
we
court.
break the news.
one Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News,
Welcome to Core
a
TV News.
24-hour news station.
May 29 was Democracy Day in Nigeria, and what it means for all of us is a celebration of the rule of law, the celebration of a government by the people, for the people, and of course, a government that surrounds the whole essence of followership, now the whole essence of togetherness and giving power back to the people. It's 15 years of democracy in Nigeria, and that's exactly what we're still basking in the euphoria of all of that. Now, during the Democracy Day presidential speech, Mr. President insists that peace will find its way back to Nigeria, that these are only trying times. It might take a while, but definitely we'll get it right. And in the middle of that, it did not only declare total war on insurgency in the north, but he also says that there is an open policy from members of the terrorist sect in a way of amnesty. Not much details has been given, but there are opinions already that this might be another reflection of what transpired in the Niger Delta. And today, that obviously is the thrust of our discussion as we consider the amnesty provision given by Mr. President. I am Nnabuife Oguntoye. I'm joined now by Chuka. Nnabuife is a journalist and a public affairs analyst. Good morning, Chuka.
Good morning,
Thank you
Femi.
for finding time to join us.
Good morning.
And let me say Happy Democracy Day to you.
Same to you, my brother.
How do you feel Nigeria 15
in arrears.
years? Oh, in arrears now.
Yes.
We were basking in another new year. It's 16 years of civilian rule in Nigeria. How do you feel as a citizen?
Well, we're part of a history now because for those of us who saw the military rule and those of us who we are privy to the arid years, I mean by governance, those of us who saw the long stretch of military and sparse slices of civilian rule that didn't get to fruition. The worst being the case of the Third Republic, which couldn't even blossom to the level of having a president. Those of us who saw it, it is like a feat to get the Fourth Republic survive up to 15 years. We've not had it such long in any history in Nigeria. So it is actually like crossing through a period of history. I'm praying that we never even had to be counting it in years. It becomes what it is, because the worst democracy is far, far better than the best, the most benevolent military dictatorship or military rule.
Now, Mr. President agreed that one of the greatest threats to the dividends of democracy is insecurity in the north, and that was obviously the body of a speech during the Democracy Day. We'd love to bring you into our live studios. All you need to do is like us on Facebook and drop your comment as I quickly intimate you with our social media feeds. On Facebook, it's www.facebook.com/Core TV News. You can like that page and drop your comments there, as well as follow us on our Twitter handle at Core TV News NG. Now you get to watch previous and present edition of Core Digest on YouTube. It's right there on your screen, youtube.com/Core TV, leave a space and news. Now many have asked Chuka the moral justification of considering amnesty for a terrorist group that has been responsible for thousands of deaths. Now many have said Nigeria is at war, but unfortunately the victims of this war are innocent, poor Nigerians. What do you think would be the moral justification of an amnesty provision, as said by Mr. President?
First of all, the situation is the crisis. The insecurity is not even only in the north. Insecurity, to a large extent, is across country, because there are instances of insecurity that are not only the Boko Haram attack, including the kidnapping, including the attack on our economic installations in the Niger Delta, including the armed robbery, including as much as you can talk about it, a lot of things that are assassinations, incidences. So insecurity is larger than just the Boko Haram incident. But the president has, as much as possible, implied that there could be a consideration for those Boko Haram operators. Of course, Boko Haram issue is incumbent on us. It is the most pressing, and it is the most embossed of the impressions we have as regards insecurity.
Okay.
But first, let's get words out of the way by explaining what the words mean. It's so unfortunate that maybe because of the first in the market perception, the word amnesty has come to the front burner to mean what it should mean, and far more than what it shouldn't mean.
Okay.
Amnesty is granted to people who are actually who have been indicted. In the real sense of amnesty, people who have been indicted, who have committed misdemeanors that are defined as crime against state, who are now reconsidered into the fold. And their punishment, mind you, on the line, the punishment are either lessened or weaved aside. It always happens in the situation of war. You understand, people who find themselves in a different divide from the divide of the state, then you re-assimilate them into the system. And that is not the case here with the Boko Haram issue. They have not even been convicted yet. And it has not been established as war yet.
Okay.
Do you understand? But for want of words, some of us in the media and people in the society use the word amnesty. By real interpretation of what amnesty should be, it is not amnesty. You understand?
Okay.
And the president did in his Democracy Day broadcast yesterday, that is in marking the 15th anniversary of our democracy, establish that if there are people who are among the insurgents, if there are Nigerians, mind you, he also hinted that there could be foreigners who are getting the collaboration of a few, I'm using his expression, of some Nigerian, implying that there are more foreign influences than internal influences. Then if there are those Nigerians who want to turn a new leaf and who want to be part of the redeem of growth of the nation, in the goodness of the nation, the government, the state will assist them in reintegrating into the system. That is how the president put it in the anniversary broadcast. So the idea of amnesty is actually a little bit of, it is more like extrapolation, more like explaining and going a step further beyond what you read from the thesis.
Okay.
You understand? Somebody can say in exigencies of analysis, you can stretch, but sometimes you don't have to stretch further than, because if there should be an amnesty, the state should pronounce it. I hope you are getting. And if there is an amnesty, there must have been a misdemeanor established by the law court, and the punishment must have been pronounced. And from that punishment, the amnesty is done, and then you are pardoning or reducing or rehabilitating.
Okay.
Do you get the thing? I'm trying to make amnesty so clear. What we use as amnesty is not amnesty.
Okay.
It is more like stretching, extrapolating from a thesis and imputing your own understanding into the thesis.
Okay, so
that's what most of us are doing now in the social space of trying to articulate what the president has put on the table for us.
For the context of this discussion, let's borrow the word amnesty.
We can still use it because it is not general usage, but
exactly.
I'm trying to establish that it is a little bit off the margin from what is
but let's look at the possibility of this amnesty being a bait for Boko Haram.
You use the right word now.
A sect that has not really been known for. You know, there's this divided opinion whether it is ideological or it is political. Some are saying all the insurgency we're experiencing now is political. Counting down to 2015 election. What's the possibility of this amnesty being a bait for Boko Haram and bringing an end to all this bombers we're experiencing?
You see, in the field, in communication deals on the message and the receiver and the feedback, which is what both the receiver and the messenger cannot control.
Okay.
What you tell me now, I am the receiver. And what I understand of it turns out to form the reaction that I give and the reaction that you give. Two of us are not in control of it. It's your message. You know what you want to tell me. And when I'm hearing it, my faculties, my understanding, my perception, what I feel of you, it may be right or it may be wrong. You understand? And then those are the things that form my reaction to it and your reaction to what I do. So the feedback is another form of the message. Now, because this is the nature of information, be it person to person, person to group, group to group, or general information in the church, in the mosque, or anything, because this is the nature of information, the people who want information to get to communication to get to what it wants to get, employ strategy. Strategy. That is, you plan the direction of your message and to get at least, if not what you want to get, to a point of what you want to get or near what you want to get. And in strategy, it's like a game. You play it like chess. The military they are the ones who own strategy. You play it's like playing IO or draft. When you are going to the crown, you may go from the left, you may go from the right. Or let me use an analogy that most Nigerians will understand, playing football. The target is that small box, that white box called the goalpost. And there is a man manning it. So you can literally say that, remove that man and score the goal. But the man playing from the other end has 11 persons. And you have 11 other persons yourself, 11 other persons trying to stop him from doing it. So you play from right, play from left, play from the middle, until eventually, once you score, that is when you do. Somebody will say, why don't you just from that end throw it into the post? But can you go there? So in strategy, you put all manner of directions. But don't lose sight on the main goal of the information. The main goal is getting peace for Nigeria. So think in the form of a picture now. The whole is like a circle, a 360-degree circle of Nigeria. And then you have an information. The main thing is to get Nigeria a sane hold, to get Nigeria as in peace. And then you put, the direction is to get this society to work in peace. And you start with one angle. Okay, there are people who are fomenting this trouble. They are Boko Haram within this circle, creating the bad egg. Okay, we want to take the group out of this their way. How do we get it? There are people who are not Muslims, and they are playing to Islamic sentiment. Let's get something to make the Christians distance themselves from the Muslims. That is removing one group. There are people there who are hunters. You understand? Who are vigilantes, who are people who are traditional people who own the land. They are not looking at what is in Abuja. They are not looking at what is in Maiduguri. They are not looking at what is in Yola or whatever capital of their local government or state. They are more interested in protecting this place so that they can farm and hunt. Okay, they are vigilantes. Let's empower them by giving them some stipend and employing the hunters to be part of the rhythm of what the state will take out the hunters, because some of them could still join the Boko Haram. Then there are people within this group who are doing this because of money. You understand? The foreigners are influencing them with money or job. Mm-hmm. Some of them were either runaways from the military or paramilitary. Okay, let's implement them, do it by hiring them into the system or at least paying them out of this. There are also people who are there who would like a job among them. Okay, let's employ them. By the time you do, you begin to deplete them. The ultimate goal is to get the land in peace.
Chuka, please let me hold you for a while there as we begin to decipher what the ideology behind this group is. We'll take a short break now to accommodate another discussant, and we'll be back with you shortly. Please stay with us.
From time immemorial, women have birthed life, shaped character, and by extension, influenced the society. Moremi of Ife, Emoten of Benin, Queen Aminat of Zaria, all women of influence and power.
Whether it's before election, after election.
How ironical. Women being so powerful, yet have few grounds in decision making.
They see you as a wife, and I see you as a wife to a man.
We are talking women in politics.
A woman will be bold enough to stand up and say, I want to become president of Nigeria.
Only on Core TV News.
Nigerians continue to
Tonight, the city of Lagos
There is still a one level of
Be the first to know from the north, south, east, west, and around Africa. We break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV News.
24-hour news station.
Core TV News now provide a platform for live coverage of political rallies and electioneering campaign from anywhere in Nigeria. Political news stories, political editorial reviews, political discussions, personality profile, People's Parliament from the National, State and Local Government Assembly. Contact us now on 0803-471-8550 or 0803-724-9733. 01453-3407.
Our 24-hour news station.
Thanks for staying the course on Core Digest today as we talk about Amnesty, Jonathan's bait for Boko Haram. We're joined now by Douglas Anele. He's a philosophy lecturer with the University of Lagos, as well as a public affairs analyst. Douglas, thank you for finding time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
In a swift reaction to Mr. President's recommendation of granting amnesty to the Boko Haram group, the Bauchi State chapter of the Christian Association of Nigeria has urged the president to rescind the decision. Now, reason being that arguing that not only has the terrorists rejected all past entreaties for dialogue and reconciliation, that the reason why they are striking is because a southerner is in power. How do you react to that in line with the ideology behind insurgency in northern Nigeria?
Oh, well, thank you very much. You see, my belief is that it appears the present administration underrated the capacity of Boko Haram to inflict severe damage and psychological trauma on Nigerians. Because I can remember when Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was in power, he said that Boko Haram would die a natural death. And President Jonathan also later re-echoed that sentiment. You see, the truth of the matter is that the present administration has failed in containing the Boko Haram menace because it did not even understand the fundamentals of insurgency and terrorism. And I feel that although the kidnap of these Chibok girls is a very terrible and horrendous thing for people to experience, it has also a positive side. It has shown to the entire world the unpreparedness of the Nigerian government to handle situations like that. It has also shown the ineptitude, the tardiness of government in responding to emergencies. Because you could see that it took more than 2 weeks before the federal government began to act in order to, handle the situation. Be that as it may, I've always felt that any appeasement, any attempt to use the carrot must be based on a big stick. Government cannot be seen to be weak in the face of terrorism. That's a very bad strategy. I've always felt that there was a time when Jonathan set up a committee to interface with Boko Haram. And I felt that that strategy was not right. Government must discourse or dialogue with Boko Haram on the basis of strength, which means that government ought to have put Boko Haram in such a pressure that they will be the ones begging and seeking for avenues for dialogue and peace. Now, I believe that the best way to handle Boko Haram actually is to defeat Boko Haram. Because Boko Haram's ideology is not a rational one. These are not people you can sit across the table and use the power of logic and argument, to persuade them to a particular position. For them, violence is the only means. And therefore, I think that when you don't have people that believe in the principles of dialogue, in the principles of negotiation, the best thing to do, after all, there's only one sovereign, the federal government of Nigeria, is to put them under tremendous pressure. But the problem with Jonathan is that sometimes political consideration trumps strategic consideration. And that's very dangerous. When we are talking about loss of lives, wanton destruction of property, and the most stupid thing of all, that you want to abrogate Western education. And meanwhile, the means the insurgents are using are actually products of this Western education they are so terribly against. And in any case, the contents of Western education, what is called Western education, is actually drawn from all parts of the world. There was even a time the Muslim countries were actually leading in some of the basic sciences, medicine and all that. So now, I can understand the sentiment of Khan, because on several occasions, churches have been targeted, Christians have been at the receiving end of this stupidity, this madness called Boko Haram. But you see, one thing I will say is this: we should learn a lesson from Nelson Mandela. Apartheid is one of the most horrible injustices human beings have inflicted on fellow human beings. But what happened? When it crumbled, Nelson Mandela, because there were resentments among the black population, the feeling for revenge to get back at their former white oppressors was very rife among the black community. And anybody can understand the sentiment. But Mandela said, look, this is not the time for revenge. This is the time for reconciliation. So my suggestion is this: government must make sure that it defeats Boko Haram. And then when it does that, it can now say, okay, now that we have complete upper hand in this issue, we can now give them amnesty. Don't also forget that part, but not the fundamental part, of the reason for this insurgency is poverty, ignorance, and unemployment.
We'll get to that, Douglas, but let me quickly come to you, Chuka. He made mention of first defeating Boko Haram before considering amnesty or bail, so to speak. Now, how feasible is that? We heard the Head Bashar said, we know where they are, we can't tell you. We cannot even use force for the safety of these over 200 schoolgirls. How feasible is defeating Boko Haram now when they already have in their custody over 200 Nigerian schoolgirls?
You know, you and I started this discussion from the angle of the implications. Maybe if we have started from the angle of the ideologies or the basic underpinnings before the implications, Dr. Anele and I, you would have found where we, at least the bridge where we where we met, I believe that you should first conquer. You understand? And that is why I did the analogy of amnesty. But I also disagree with him in saying that in strategy, that is in the communication strategy. And that was what we were building before he came in. Where I believe is that the state must not approach any negotiation with any interest group. Mind you, in the ideology of state is never morally right or wrong. State is state. A state can never be wrong. You understand? State can never be wrong. And state doesn't mean the president or the king or the person. A state is judged by the statute of that state. So Boko Haram cannot approach the table with the state. But while I was explaining amnesty to you, I told you that you first must be, the person must first be indicted, punishment recommended, before you now grant amnesty. I think that was where we were coming. So that means that there must be something. The state must rein in the dogs first. You must first rein in the dogs, get in the cage, before you release it.
Would you say we are not ripe for such amnesty now? Is that what you're talking about?
No, amnesty, I tried as much as possible in the preamble you and I had to establish that amnesty is the wrong tag. But you said, let us just use it because it is a general thing. It is actually a level of ignorance in the media and a level of ignorance in the society to use the word amnesty. Do you understand? But let's go to the concept, the ideology first, so that you know where I'm driving at. The ideology here is, if you come, amnesty, Boko Haram, come, let us talk. You understand? It looks like you're weak. If Boko Haram say, oh yeah, let us talk, it looks like you're weak. But I was giving you an analogy of a circle, a 360-degree circle. And you begin to eat bit by bit. How do you eat an elephant? You eat it bit by bit. So you begin to remove. Remember, there have been northern interest groups that have been calling for amnesty, even about 3 years ago. I hope you remember, 2011, 2012. That was the main thing that they were calling for, amnesty, because there was amnesty to the Niger Delta militants. So now you eat up that group, or you bring it to your food. You bring war is strategy. Napoleon Bonaparte said, nobody ever wins a war. It's a strategy that wins the war. Do you understand? Now, in communication study, you begin to eat up their mind. Even the appetite that Dr. Anele referred to. How did appetite even get to the government? Is it not by negotiations? Gradually, inside negotiations, from the fringe, the Encounter with Caesar were seized up ANC and became the mainstream of ANC. Encounter with Caesar was a youth wing that turned out to become the militant wing and eventually became the controllers of ANC. They ate up ANC, African National Congress, and then became the main negotiators in the table with the appetite government, and eventually became the government and became the mainstream of South Africa. Do you understand? You bring people in through their minds. Now you eat up the whole. Gradually you get to the core. Mind you, when you are even going to negotiate with somebody who is going to come and, is he not a human being? The person will first of all agree that he was part of the insurgents. That is one success. And you bring him in, and you bring him in, and you bring him in. Even the larger society that is saying, do everything to bring back the girls. Do everything, talk with them. There are a lot of us, or don't you hear it in the society? So you have to bring him to your fold by giving the impression that you are also ready to talk. Okay. Because you need a followership to be able to do a leadership. Leadership is not. So, first of all, for communication strategy is a winning game. You understand? But the first is that the state must not approach it with its hand, looking like its hands are tied. That is where I disagree with Doctor. Doctor makes it look like, because of the fact that you are putting up these strategies on the ground, that it means that the state has cowered. No. It is actually more of like putting out a dragnet, and the net will come. But you must have the core goal. The core goal is to conquer. The core goal is to win the fight.
It's all right, Doctor. 1 minute, Alex Bade is saying that we can't use force on Boko Haram, even though we know where they are keeping the girls. And then another minute on Democracy Day, Mr. President is saying it's total war. I have instructed that every means possible under the law, we are going to fight to finish. And then in a quick reaction to that, the U.S. Secretary is saying that he wants to find out what Mr. President meant by total war, because that could impair the safety of these schoolgirls. Where do we stand in all of this put together?
Well, you see, as I said earlier, it definitely will be a terrible mistake for the government to appear to be dancing to the tune dictated by Boko Haram. It should be the other way around, because it will be anomalous for the tail to wag the dog. It is the dog that wags the tail. You see, what the Chief of Defense Staff said could also be part of strategy. It could be the game plan of the military to really actually defeat Boko Haram by force. But of course, in terms of communicating to the public, you don't lay all your cards on the table, okay? The fundamental presupposition of any meaningful dialogue is that the parties to the dialogue must agree that there must be some common grounds on the basis of which the dialogue must proceed. If you have on one side a set of fanatical subhumans who have no compunction kidnapping young women, having forced sex with them, forcing them to marry people who they don't want, threatening to kill them off, people who have lost their fundamental humanity. How do you dialogue with such people? Even when you have an intermediary, like Obasanjo from what we read in the papers, there's also this lawyer who is supposed to be an intermediary. For goodness sake, you see, for all my criticisms of George Bush, he got it right in going after Al-Qaeda. There is no other way. You see, the problem I have with people, especially when they speak in public, is that they don't really express what they feel. They express what they feel people want to hear. Luckily, I'm not that kind of person. Boko Haram must be defeated, because if you don't, if the government does not, there are armies of future Boko Harams that may even be deadlier than the current Boko Haram we are talking about. You see, the fact of the matter is that Nigeria is a fractured federation. And if you look at not just the body language, but the natural language coming from certain prominent elements in the North, you will not be mistaken if you think that there are some of these people that are actually the puppeteers. And the Boko Haram you are seeing are merely the puppets.
Doctor, please hold your thought a while there as we take a short break now for the news update coming up shortly on the hour. Don't forget that we're discussing Amnesty, Jonathan's bait for Boko Haram. I have Dr. Douglas Anele, a lecturer of philosophy with UNILAG, and of course a public affairs analyst, as well as a journalist and public affairs analyst, Chuka, Nnabuife, with me. They will be joining us again after this short break. Don't go away.
Core TV News, expanding your views.